our next panel for the day, which is the Human Experience panel. We have another great lineup of speakers. There's 3 of them to introduce to you. First off, I will tell you about Dr. Kashiri Henry, PhD. She is driven by her mission of building to last and ennobling for success. Her ability to first develop the being and bring the authentic self to all of the doing makes her a sought-after member of the Forbes Coaches Council, CEO of Kaz Henry Inc., and founder of Ennobled for Success Institute. Her acumen includes Duracell brand acquisition for Warren Buffett, business transformation for Chicago Teachers Pension Fund, etc., driving change management, financial strategy, and business process improvement. A graduate school professor, she continues to transform students representing the U.S. military, public safety, private sector, and nonprofit sectors. Dr. Cass shares her wisdom-filled lessons to help others live an ennobled, powered, and positive life by drawing from her life in her #1 international bestseller, Ennobled for Success, From Civil War to U.S. CFO, and her podcast, Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, How to Get It Just Right. Can't wait to check that one out. Also, we have with us Una Lappin. Una is a connector, an educator, a speaker, a storyteller, a writer, a poet, and international humanitarian. She's married with 2 boys and currently lives in Ireland. She has worked all over the world in 4 continents, North America, Europe, Asia, and Africa. She has extensive experience in interacting in a multicultural environment locally, nationally, and internationally, and has a strong passion for connectivity and humanity. She is the founder of her own business, Unique New Adventures Limited, where she rejoices in all of our differences and similarities through education. She is a #1 best-selling author. And also on the panel, we have Upendra Giri. Simply put, Upendra is a transformer. He is a pioneering organizational mentor, a coach and trainer, and one of the reputed and influential business thought leaders who help senior executives from the Bay Area to Bengaluru transform their organizations to achieve more innovation, collaboration, and business agility. Recipient of the prestigious Eric Jennett Awardee by PMI, Upendra is CEO and founder of Uplift Global, founder and trustee of PMI North India Chapter, and is a charter member of TIE. All right, so another powerhouse panel that you are going to enjoy right now. I am going to hand it back over to Seema so that she can get that started.
Thank you, Laurel. I am so happy to be here with everyone. Thank you, Dr. Kasturi, Una, and Upendra for being here again. And for those of you who are just joining us, I want to let you know that our book, Break Free to Peace, Love, and Unity, has hit #1 international best-selling status, #1 in 5 countries. And the 5 countries are US, India, Australia, Canada, and UK. And we've also hit 54 best-selling categories across the board, across all of these countries. So we're really excited. Want to thank you all for your support in making this happen. And we're so happy that you're here joining us. So let's get started with this wonderful panelist. The Human Experience, Break Free to Peace, Love, and Unity. It's all about experiences, isn't it? Let's start with this first question. How do you define the human experience from the lens of an entrepreneur? All 3 of you are entrepreneurs, so let's go with Dr. Kasturi. You're on mute.
Such an honor and pleasure to be here. Congratulations to all the authors on reaching the #1 international bestseller status, and an honor to be here with my fellow panelists. When I think of being an entrepreneur through the lens of human experience, to me, it's about knowing who I am as an entrepreneur, or whoever the entrepreneur is, knowing themselves, and then taking a step into taking our passion and our purpose to bring it to life without letting a single story or a single experience define us. We take that step with purpose, with also the faith that if I have the right belief system and I know who I am and my purpose is grounded in who am I being, then my belief system ultimately drives me to my destiny. And the universe will rise up and meet me. It's the energy I put out there, and that energy comes back to me. So I approach it from the perspective of very much, I resonate with whatever Wendy said also, because to me, it comes from the teachings of Rumi, teachings of Gandhi. All of that comes from a place where what I believe become my thoughts become my words become my action shapes my character, and my character is my destiny. So when I understand that, and I take that step towards entrepreneurship with my sense of purpose, grounded in my being, because it's the being that informs all my doing, then success naturally comes, but it comes because my right brain, with my gratitude and my kindness and my empathy, is triggering all the positivity in my body chemistry to bring that 80% success that also enhances my 20% of my IQ and my skills. So together it allows me to accomplish it. So ultimately, who am I being is the trigger to my success.
Wow, what an amazing answer. Thank you. Let's go to Upendra. Upendra, how do you define that?
If we look at the purpose behind any creation, why the creation or whatever happens around us, right? So we are driven by the change which is happening around us, or we become the change agent by itself, right? So most people, if you talk to, they would say, okay, we created this, and they would say, this is what we do. But if we went deeper, then they would say, this is how I do. But most likely, most people suffer from this question, why the hell they do what they do? So I think why is more important, because why defines the character, why defines the purpose of being what you are. So each one of us, there are people who are lucky, they can dream, they can deliver within themselves. So many times you'll find somebody has a vision, but there are other people who are delivering it, right? For example, I had a close conversation in 2015 with the Larry Page. It was a global conclave in San Francisco, and the question was put to him, why did you create Alphabet Inc. as a company? When you are so good with Google doing so well. So the answer was that, Google was never a mother, because it's the mother which has a womb, which gives the birth to the next origin, which comes out of an entrepreneur, right? So the creativity or creation can only happen when there is a womb, So they had to create womb later. The product became so powerful, but they could not have the offspring coming out of the product, So the purpose of Google, if you see where they started, but where they are today, or the aspirations they would have for tomorrow, it keeps changing for people. It is not necessarily the same thing, but they are always driven by probably the North Star in their life, which helps them navigate. It probably is the consciousness, which is probably a deeper sense for us, that what is the purpose for all of us to be on this planet. So being an engineer, I always been a right-minded kind of, right head kind of guy, right brain, because they have to think logical, scientific, calculations, permutations, all that, right? But most of the world is driven by the masses are driven by the left brain people, right? So Corona times, for example, let's look at Corona situation, right? Let's look at the top few leaders in the world who were able to handle people while the expectations are very different. Somebody said beautifully that we are not necessarily in the same boat. We are in the same ocean, but we are all in different boats. Every one of us had been handling our situation differently. So if we are close to our purpose, if we are close to our being, it is close to our essence of answering why, I think we would have more balance to our mind, body, and spirit, and of course, the universe. And that is the true spirit of the entrepreneur.
That is an interesting insight. Thank you for that. And it's true, it's an evolution. Sometimes when entrepreneurship is something that not many people understand. And then when you declare to the world that you're starting a certain business, you're going to be doing something, and you evolve and you end up doing something else, other people look at you and think, did they know what they were doing? Now they started with one thing, now they're doing something else. But it really is an evolution, because you're constantly becoming. You're becoming the person that you're supposed to be. And you may start off with one area. I started off with wellness coaching when I started this part of the business after project management. But now I'm helping bring forth stories and doing these kind of summits, which I never thought I would be doing, but I evolved into that. And we always are becoming, so keep that in mind. You're always becoming to who you're really meant to be. And that means you might be changing something that you had started from, and that's okay. Una, I would love to hear from you how you define the human experience from the lens of an entrepreneur.
Thank you very much, Seema, first of all, for letting me be on this panel and wonderful speakers to be side by side. I look at it quite simply as just coming as I am, as me, as a human to human. The work that I've been doing as an entrepreneur, it's very much driven around connection and compassion. And I think when you come with that in mind, the human experience is you've lived it, you've survived it, and you bring who you are to it. And I think anybody I work with, I look at them as a person, as a whole person, and we all have something to bring. So the lens for me is quite simple, that you're human, I'm a human, so we can connect on that level and then move forward. I very much resonated with Wendy when she talked about beliefs and, you know, going through different scenarios and as you say, becoming. And my story to entrepreneurship is very, very young. It's only from last year, because I've been through something and I had the headspace to realize how I became an entrepreneur. And it was through human to human contact and experience that made me who I am. So it's ensuring that everything I do is through compassion. It is through connectivity and being 100% me. I think to be an entrepreneur, you have to be 100% you. And there's all these ifs and buts and should and shouldn't, but you know who you are. You know what you can do. And if you have that belief, you can pass it on to others and inspire others and motivate others to do what they want to do. Because I had that only a year and a half ago. I didn't have the belief. Now I have the belief. So it's a constantly growing and developing, but always keeping it real, as I say, authentic and being human to human. Because life happens, but life happens in a good way as well as in maybe not so good way, but then you learn. So keep looking forward, look back to learn and maybe not do, or maybe readjust. And remember, we're all human and things can happen, and that's life. And maybe not be hard on oneself. So as I say, compassion, connection, and bringing your whole self to who you interact with the education that I do in my role at the moment. And just, you know where you're going, you know what you want to achieve, but always with others and be authentic on the journey.
I think you've hit on a key point that you said, being you and an authentic you. And that takes courage. And many people are afraid of showing who they really are because they're afraid of being judged. But when you are being you, I think that's when you are least judged, because your essence is coming out, your gift and your talent is coming out, and everyone gets to see that. So that's the key thing to keep in mind. Now, Kasturi, you have an amazing story of you're from Sri Lanka, and you went from Sri Lanka to India as a refugee, and you've seen so much change throughout your life. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience and what has been the defining skill which kept you going?
Thank you for that question. People always ask me if I could go back and change my childhood, if I would. And my answer is no. Having been born in the middle of a civil war and seeing man's inhumanity to man and what people will stoop to doing to one another in a cold-hearted way because they can think of somebody in a dehumanized way, that is the most powerful lesson I learned as a child. It also taught me that in the midst of all of that dehumanization, everybody has that craving need to be recognized as a human being. So the fact that I lived and the fact that I'm in front of you here today always reminds me that there were people caring enough to sacrifice themselves for others to live. And even when we would get raided in the middle of the night in our home for the only sin of being born a minority in our own homeland, I learned that being afraid, being angry, being hateful for the circumstance only makes me become like them. And then I lose myself and I give over the power of who I am to somebody else. So my approach, even as a child, I read a lot as a child. So my name is Kasturi. My mother named me Kasturi because she was doing her dissertation in Gandhi's nonviolence peace movement. But I was also named Kasturi for another reason, because when I was born in the Hindu tradition, we do a horoscope. And my horoscope for my Hindu priests indicated that I will be a child who will leave my motherland, my mother, everything I'm familiar with, and raise siblings on my own as a child in another country. And they felt that I needed to have a name that was going to give me everything I needed, because my name was the only thing I was going to take. And we are from a culture where we don't have a last name. No child is a property of a parent, so my name is Kasturi. So I had two names. One of my names was Kasturi. And Kasturi comes from the deer, right? The deer that's in the Himalayas looking for the fragrance. And as the male deer keels over to die, he realizes that musk, that life-affirming, life-saving Ayurvedic medicine musk is in the navel of himself. So the purpose of naming me Kasturi also is to remind me that everything I need in life is already inside me. I just have to have the faith and courage to draw from within. So as a child who was growing up around all the anger and hate, and the adults were too busy in the middle of a war with other things, stress and distraction and everything. So as a child, I could turn to books. And I was trilingual. I could read books in Tamil, one of the oldest languages in the world, and English. So I got the Eastern and Western background of philosophy. And I learned that I can choose to be kind. I can choose to be human in the face of inhumanity. And so what I started doing is when we got raided at midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I would tell them, you know what? And these are young boys. They're 18 to 21. What do they know? They're doing what somebody else told them to. So my goal was to let them see me as a human being and humanize that moment. And I would offer them tea. I would say, why don't you sit down? You look so exhausted. Take a break, I'll make you tea. So at 2 o'clock, I would make them tea. I would cook dinner for them. And I was able to, and I know they just raped the mother next door and killed the children right in front of the father. All of that is besides the point, because that was not the moment to be distracted about. What was the purpose here? To make sure that they didn't do that in my household, didn't hurt my family, my mother was safe, my siblings were safe, right? So in that moment, I learned how to use humor and how to use humanity and how to use kindness to make them feel human. And I had about 15 to 20 seconds to get their attention, because either I flip the script or not. And I've always had this attitude that what's the worst thing that can happen to me? They'll kill me. I'm a Hindu, I'm coming back. So I'm also not bashful in saying, you know what, you kill me, I'm going to come back as your kid and I'll make your life so miserable you may not want to kill me, right? So I am comfortable, and I'm from a Buddhist country, so Sri Lanka is a Buddhist country. And so use humor and kindness and food to flip the script. And it was so happened that then they started coming regularly to have their meals. And even the night before I was leaving for India, after my 10th grade, they all came to wish me well. So they stopped seeing me as a minority kid who needs to be persecuted to this young child who used to cook for us, and I became their kid sister. And what that lesson taught me is it doesn't matter how other people show up. I show up in a way that is true to me. Shakespeare talks about this in Hamlet too, right? It's not just an Eastern thing, it's a Western thing too. If I show up in my humanity the way I am meant to be, I give permission to everybody else to show up as they are, and I create a moment to flip the script for everybody. And it also then de-stresses the situation for everybody. So to me, that is the biggest lesson learned. And I brought this into the corporate world. I mean, I'm the person who packed up my bag and left with nothing to India at 16. And I'm also the young lady who packed up my bag with $2.5 grand in my pocket at the age of 27 and came to America. I knew I had admission for an MBA program, but I figured out the rest. So the belief that the universe is going to rise up to meet me, I can figure it out. And there is always a way. If the mustard seed could have the faith, so could I.
Amazing, Kasturi, that is amazing. And so, I mean, at that age, and when you're in that moment, it's so difficult to think of the things that you just shared that you thought of, and to bring it back to the moment, regardless of what they've done just to your next door neighbors, but to be in that moment and find the humanity and compassion as a saving tool, that's just brilliant. I don't have enough words to say, and that is just amazing. Oh,
I
wow.
honestly don't take credit for any of that. I think it's a God-given gift. And I was guided to books. And it just happened. To me, it was a divine intervention and a divine thing that I just bring forward. I don't take credit for any of that, if that even makes sense.
No, and you're being very humble. I believe it has to be a divine intervention to be able to think of something like that at that kind of a moment, because everyone else, including me, would be freaking out, quite frankly, and you know, trying to do. But you were present, and you were able to do that. That is amazing. Upendra, you've had an amazing journey so far as well. I mean, you started from the village, and you had no, you know, I don't think you even had a seed of thinking that you would be doing all the things you've done and traveling the world. I think you've traveled over 25 countries, served so many people. What was your defining skill that kept you going just to strive for more and strive for excellence?
When I reflect back, because this question is very interesting, because it makes you think, you know, you have to scan the whole life like 52 years back, right? So born in a village where your father is looking after 40 odd members, living on the farmland, and your parents, people say my parents don't spend time with us. My parents had no time to spend with us, by the way. They had no time. So we were literally raised by my aunts and uncles, you know. And so a child in a village is everybody's child. You know, there's so many eyes are looking at you, and you have to be monitored continuously. So you cannot behave erratic, you know. So growing up, that culture had been blessing and disguise for sure, right? So if I reflect back, I remember one day I was, there used to be, the airport is very close to my village, you know, probably 70 odd kilometers. So the plane would fly when I was in the field, and then I will see and look at the plane and always wonder why the hell this heavy metal could fly and I could not fly. So what makes them fly? So I was always a curious child, you know, but I had no answers in my village, you know. So one time this engineer came to set up a tube well, and I had a lot of questions for him, and he said that you have to work hard to be what I am today, because, you know, the engineers would come to the village. They will come on a Jeep, and Jeep was a wonderful, vehicle. I never saw a four-wheeler in my life where it could run by itself, right? Automobile, because I came from block cart and the horse cart and all that. So it was very interesting to see. And that really intrigued me that, could you make all these things which can fly, which can run and all that? So he said, yeah, there's a way to do that. So that got me going. And I remember my, gentleman who was in my distance relation, he was holding 4 ministries. Ministries means the political post who run the country. So, and he was approached by one gentleman whose son just became an engineer. So this gentleman said, could you help my son get a job? And now my dreams got shattered because the engineer is struggling to get a job now. So I at that time decided that one day I want to create opportunities for people. I don't want to struggle to get a job myself. So as I started building my courage towards that, because as Kasturi just said, your thoughts, if I put what Kasturi said and what Mr. Sanjeev Chopra said, he said, you become average of 5 people, right? So I chose those 5 people I wanted to hang out with at one given point of time. Because you hang out with people, they share their mindset, and those thoughts become your words. And as you said, the words become your actions becomes your habit becomes your character, and then your character becomes your destiny. So to me, one thing was common all throughout this journey was the resilience. I never gave up, I never gave in. If I decided something, I was sure that this is what exactly I want to do. And till date, I continue moving forward with that. But there's a trick to this. My mother, when she was looking after 40 odd members in the family, she will get up early in the morning, 4 o'clock. She would worship this plant called Tulsi in the morning. She would, pay her offerings with the water. And then she would grind wheat to convert into the flour for those people, 40 odd members in my family for a whole day. And these people would eat a lot because they have to work hard in the field, right? So remember how much hard work went into, and throughout the whole day, she was in front of burning those woods and, that cow dung throughout the whole day. So I saw my parents working very, very hard, very hard. But one thing came out of this. There was no electricity, so my mother will wake me up at 4 o'clock, and that's called Brahm Muhurat. So Brahm Muhurat happens to be, by the way, this is the secret for a lot of those people who don't know this, but it is exactly 2 hours, 10 minutes prior to whenever sun rises. That is the most peaceful time of the 24 hours, when your body, your mind, your spirit, and the universe could be in unison. When you are in complete balance, miraculous things would happen. And that's exactly happened when I was growing up as a child. From my nursery time to my 8th grade, this was my routine thing every day. Till date, if I see that clubbed with resilience, I think that did wonders to me. And this is the reason why I'm with this awesome set of people sharing my story today. So I'm very pleased to be here, but I think I will give credit to resilience for sure.
Wow, really, really insightful. It's just amazing how parents have been such a great support, and they teach you in so many ways, not just by what they tell us, but also by, like Dr. Chopra was saying earlier, leading by example. We pick up so many things that have been unsaid, and from just observation. That is amazing. Thank you, Upendra, for that. And Una, you've worked across 4 continents. You're an international humanitarian. You've worked across 4 continents, and I'm sure you have seen many things that many places that may not even have the basic needs to do well and survive. You know, how do you, what has been, and some things must have been heart-wrenching things to even be a part of, to look at, to see, to observe, much less be part of and be in there with them in the trenches. What has been that key skill for you that kept you going?
The key skill, and yes, it's true, but I mean, the 4 continents I worked across, 2 were in the humanitarian sector. So across Asia and across Africa as a nutritionist. So it was very hands-on. So it was poverty, it was severely malnourished children, it was also the positive side as well. So for me, it was very much gratitude. And Uprinda, you know, there's also a very strong element of resilience. So for me, it was just where I was and where I worked and what I did, there was always gratitude. And what really, really startled me, because I'm from the West, as it was described, I was described as white and Western and a Christian. And I went to countries that weren't like that, was just the welcome and the gratitude for me being there and the organization for me being there. And I was truly grateful every single day for where I was from, for what I was seeing and who I was interacting with. There were very, very extreme examples, and I won't go into, but what you see in the media was what I worked as. As I say, it was very hands-on. I was doing surveys, nutrition surveys, and measuring children for malnutrition. And at the time, I wasn't a mother. I was not a mother, and it'd be very different now. But I was always truly grateful for the fact that I was allowed to be in these countries, because you need a visa. You just don't get in. And I was allowed and privileged to be in local homes and privileged to experience local customs and traditions as part of the community. So it's very much welcomed for being so different. And I'm a very proud Irish lady, and I came from where I came, and I was very much more red than when I went in. So very, very different. But it didn't make any difference. And I was just, the gratitude was unbelievable by families who had nothing. And I mean nothing. But they always were very grateful for what they did have. You know, they had their home. They might not have had water, but they were grateful for they had a well. So it was just, for me, it was acknowledging that and flipping my thinking. Because I went in not knowing. I always wanted to be a humanitarian from a picture I saw when I was 18. But a picture 2D is nothing like 3D and the real life and the smells and the heat and all of that. It's, you know, and the human beings, because it's humans going through these disasters. So it was just the gratitude that being there, and the gratitude and the privilege for experiencing that, because it's made me who I am today. And the resilience that I saw, I suppose there'd be 2, if I may. The gratitude and the resilience of the individuals I saw. Because, you know, earthquakes, famines, civil war, you know, war. I was in Afghanistan, the Taliban had fallen 4 months previous. I was in Iraq when Saddam Hussein had fallen a month previous. So I'm going into quite, you know, hard-hitting countries and cities. So the resilience of the individuals that I saw, which outpoured to me, that certainly became more resilient, because I realized that, you know, as we say here in Belfast, wise up. You know, when you kind of feel sorry for yourself, wise up, because I am very, very grateful for what I have, and being grateful for being permitted in this country. So it's given me this privileged education that I certainly would never have gotten, and just seeing the resilience firsthand. Because going into homes, I have one story, if I may. I went into a village to do a survey, and you do 30 homes in 30 clusters, 900, and then 900 children. So a lot of children. Some were very frightened of me because I looked so different. And that was interesting. But this woman lived in a very small home and had nothing. And I mean nothing. And she didn't let myself and my team leave without making us lunch. And it was simply rice. But it was her way of thanking us. And I knew I was going to get sick because hygiene's not very good. I would never have said no, because I'm very respectful. And I ate the lunch, and it was such a privilege and honor to do that. And that's her being extremely grateful for me, but I was being grateful for her. And, you know, it was just the resilience of that lady. And it was just heart-wrenching, because she had nothing, but she had something. So that's my mantra, you might have nothing, but you do have something. It could be a smile. It could be a hug, back in the day when we could hug. You know, it doesn't need to be huge. So gratitude and resilience for my time when I lived away and worked away. And now that's what I'm doing now, is bringing that education forward. Because I've seen so much, so many differences, and it's wonderful. So now I want to share that, because I think if you're exposed to differences, it makes you a better person. So that worldview I've taken. So gratitude and resilience would be two, if one is allowed to have two.
Wow, that is amazing. And for that woman to even, think of sharing when she didn't have anything, that's amazing. That our tendency, a human tendency, is to hoard, keep things with us, whatever we have, especially when we don't have enough. And I do have seen, that when people really don't have much, they're even more willing to share than those who have.
Yes, and this was
Which
her
just
ration.
blows my mind.
This was her ration, and I could not say no, because the team, sometimes I always had a translator, sometimes I didn't want the translation because it was a very sensitive topic, so I respectfully stepped away. She was so adamant that we could not leave without this, and it was her ration for her to live, and she was willing to share. So she had nothing, but she had something. So that stuck with me and still sticks with me. Yeah.
That is a Twitter kind of a thing, a post to, right? You have nothing, but you do have something. That is such a great reminder. Thank you for that. There's a question from the audience, and it's from Ariel, one of our authors, and she wants to know, where do you find yourself hitting a wall still, even if it's only temporary, and how do you move through it? Kasturi, we'll start with you.
I'm thinking how I want to answer this. Where I start hitting a wall is probably when I start looking at things through my lens of experience and start relating to the context of where I'm living. So my husband always, who's an American, he reminds me, don't judge other people by my value system. So I come from a place where, in spite of the war, I saw so much humanity and so much kindness and so much compassion in a third world country. I am now living in a first world country with all the wealth and all the material. And it's so hard for people to think about somebody else because it's all about I, me, and myself. To me, that is where I hit the wall. I have the contrast of utter humanity, selfless humanity in the middle of nothing and war and destruction, and utter selfishness and self-centeredness in the presence of abundance. And that is what makes me hit a wall to try and figure out why in scarcity people embrace abundance, and in abundance people are embracing the attitude of scarcity, because if I give, I will have less. And so my work today through Ennobled for Success Institute, and the purpose of me writing in that book, Ennobled for Success, is to truly help people understand, just because you give a branch from your tree, it doesn't kill your tree. It just propagates your tree and amplifies your tree and multiplies your tree. Life is like a tree. You water the roots, you get the shade from the branches and the leaves, and the food from the leaves and the fruit, right? So you don't look for return on your investment where you made the investment, but give it out with goodness, because then it propagates everything that is good and everybody has enough. And so my mission and my purpose of building to last and ennobling for success stems from where I have hit the wall, because I know it's possible. I know it's a belief system and frame of mind. And I have had the honor and privilege of living both in the East and West. And I travel all over the world helping global clients. And this is a problem even in the business world, right? Because who we are and the way we think and the way we make choices affects big business. So how do we rewire ourselves? And in this process, how am I able to at least increase my way of understanding and my way of impacting, so that we can cross-pollinate. We tend to learn all the bad things from one another. What if we learn the good things? What if people teach us to tell all the wonderful things in another language instead of all the profanity when we learn one, right? So same way, why don't we take the best things of each other's cultures instead of stereotyping the negativity? And so my hope is that where I hit the wall is where I'm also creating the breakthrough, because I need to be a change agent. If I'm going to break through that wall for me, then I can't do it alone. I need the humanity to come with me. And that's the reason I also do my show, Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, How to Get It Just Right. It's about how do I find the centeredness and come from a place of influence, because each of us can only influence 3 levels from where we are. If I'm already at the extreme right hand or extreme left hand, I can only influence 3 levels towards the center. But if I'm already coming from the center, I have 7 degrees of influence. So how do I create that influence? And how do I create a belief system where we all understand it's our shared destiny? COVID, unlike anything else, is reminding us that our destiny is shared. If I don't wear a mask because I am young and I'm healthy, then I am propagating the disease to everybody else. And every time the disease spread, the virus mutates, and then the vaccines can be rendered meaningless. So we either take care of everybody or we're all in this together in terms of the risk and exposure. So to me, this is Mother Nature telling us, get with the program. This is not about you. This is about all of you. And you're all in this together. We may not be in the same boat, but we are still in the same ocean, right, Upendra? So how do we make sure that we lift up each other's boats? Because we're all going to make it to the other end, but only together.
And if necessary, bring them on into your boat.
Mm-hmm.
Very well said. Upendra, how about you?
Well, I think
What do you do when you hit a wall?
I think we get conditioned over a period of time, and that becomes the belief. And then this is the worst thing can happen to you, that you just believe so much that you can't see beyond that, right? So many times, and it happens with most of us. And as Kasturi said, I think COVID happens to the perfect example how this, shattered our belief actually. That world could not stop for a day across the board, right? That could never have happened earlier, but it has happened almost 1 year now, right? So when you want to predict future and you want to get to the future or next stage, the best way to do that is to create it, and you become the change agent to make it happen. It is only possible that you start. So there's a concept, I don't know if you are familiar with that, but there's a company, Intel and Google followed this is called OKRs, by the way, objective and key results. They talk about 2 things where employees are given some committed goals, which they expect them to achieve, which they do on ongoing basis, right? But they are also asked to set their aspiring goals. Like, for example, if I said to somebody that how fast could you run, person would say 1 mile I could do in 5 minutes. That's if you are really do marathon, right? So then you say to the same person that if there is a dog chasing you, which the owner just left it on the leash, right? How fast would you run now? And it's a dangerous dog, right? And then if a lion is chasing you, who had been hungry for days. So where do you get that energy and power and willpower to challenge your past performances? Where does it come from? So it's our own belief. So when we are put in a situation, so it's nothing, whatever you tolerate, that's what you will accept, you will get, right? It's all about what you can tolerate. So to me, it's the belief you have to overcome that. And the best way to push your limits. I think most of the people on the panel would agree to this. How do we push our limits? Of course, you have to go get into a different state of mind. And but by the way, Brahmarut does the wonders, by the way, to get into different state. When you challenge the status quo, so it gets you into it raises your consciousness, and in that state, you get into flow state. And in flow state, so this happens with my dog, by the way. We have a pit bull, and I experiment with this guy, right? So if I hold his toy up to 5 feet, this guy keep looking at it, that he's least interested. He's bored. He's not interested. But if I hold that toy up to 9 feet, then he's still anxious, right? But because he can't do anything with it. But if I do like 6.5 feet, he will be jumping for it. So who are we? Are we looking at 5 feet, or are we looking for 8 feet target? So it all depends on our belief system. So how do we challenge that? I think that's where you need to probably break the ceiling of your own belief system.
That is so true. That was a great example. So our time is coming near to an end. Una, what would be one of your closing thoughts?
My closing thoughts, and thank you. My closing thoughts would be just remember that we're all human. I'm very much about humanity. And, speak to the person who you're speaking with how you would like to be spoken to. And I have lived through many experiences, and we all had the lived experience and the life experience, and they're different. So I had frustrations when I first came home because people had this and were arguing about, for me, it was small things and it made no sense. I just came from, Afghanistan, where they have to get water from their well, and they don't have electricity. And I got very frustrated. And it's just realizing that that's a lived experience for me, but not for you. So how can I expect you to understand that? It's getting beyond that frustration. So I always bring it back to humanity, rejoice in our differences and acknowledge our similarities. So just when you're having a moment, maybe step back, draw a breath, and realize that that person in front of you is doing their best. I think we all genuinely do our best. And if we can remember that, and if you have a wobble day, as I call it, list your achievements and look back to see what you have achieved. So back to humanity, and you're human, I'm a human, so let's interact and let's be authentic, and let's be honest and keep things real and not try to build anybody up or knock anybody down, because I believe we're all on this world. We're going to say island. I'm used to speaking about an island. We're all on this one world. Let's live together and let's acknowledge and respect each other for who we are. That's my lasting piece. Thank you.
Wow, that's amazing. And I think that's a perfect way to end and bring that back to what we started with, and what the whole premise of this event is you lead with humanity and compassion, embrace the differences and honor the similarities. So well said. And being in the present moment, there's nothing we can do that the moment that has just passed. Future, we don't really know. That's why they call this moment a present, because it truly is a gift. And in that moment, when you're present, you can really change what's going to happen in the next moment. It was such an honor to moderate this panel with all of you. Kasturi, Upendra, Una, thank you so much for being here. This is truly a global panel. Kasturi is here in Chicago. Una is in Ireland. Upendra is in India. So thank you so much I know it's really late for the two of you, Una and Upendra. I appreciate you staying up late and being on this panel. It was great. And please do look at our Facebook page, and in the chat, there's some questions from people, but we just don't have time to take it on right now. Once again, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's such an honor and pleasure.
Thank you.